Can you just put some color on how he was reeling you in? You know, like when I talked to Benita, she talked a lot about how this doctor was just over the top with like the rose petals and the gifts. And she had tape of him like, my love, my love. And she thought he was this world-class doctor saving lives with this, you know, brand new breakthrough technology. You know, so you could kind of see how, you know, any young woman to be like, this is a pretty good catch. He's hanging out with the Clintons and the Obamas, allegedly.
Yep.
But I remain somewhat mystified about what this guy had to recommend him, like how he mind-wormed into your psyche.
Well, a couple of things. One is that because I met him through Twitter, now X DMs, there was at least a month or more before I saw him in person. So he was able to sort of do a number on me before I even met him, which was smart on his part, because if I had met him, a lot of things in my intuition might have told me that he wasn't right. But by that time, he'd gotten me sort of hooked on this fantasy. And what he really did was weaponize my ambitions, because I really believed in my business and what we were doing for the world. And he effectively love bombed me with validation, and knew what I wanted to hear, and saying that he believed in me, and that, you know, that my business was so important to helping the world and helping to heal people and helping to change the way people eat. And that's really what got me, and making me believe that he would help me be able to realize those dreams.
Forgive me for the psychoanalysis, but when you look back at how you were when you were a little girl, have you, in retrospect, been able to like explain your susceptibility to that kind of, you know, your need for that kind of outside flattery and I don't know, building you up?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've done a lot of my own psychoanalysis to try to figure these things out. And I always tell people the most important work that you can do is this deep self-reflection and looking at your childhood and whatever your specific wounds are. Because even if you grew up and had good parents who weren't, you know, abusive or cruel in any way, shape, or form, you know, perhaps they're, you know, emotionally unavailable in some way, or you're not getting the validation you want, or, you know, for whatever reason, I grew up, you know, I might present a certain way, but I really was also probably deeply insecure in a lot of ways and needed that sort of validation. And then on the other side of the show, one of the things that happened on the other side of this show coming out is that people bombarded me asking me if I'd ever had an autism diagnosis. And I thought, like, that had never occurred to me. And so I went and got an evaluation and ended up getting a diagnosis. So it used to be called Asperger's, and now they call it Autism 1 for whatever reason. But that's another thing that shed a lot of light on whatever it is about my particular wiring that makes me, you know, that sort of allows for that paradox of being objectively reasonably intelligent, yet also unable to see certain things that other people might have seen.
Right. It's almost like a social, I don't want to say handicap, but like a social struggle that when you have Asperger's, social does not come easy to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I can, again, and women I think are better at masking, so people don't see it as easily. You know, I can go out there and talk to people and nobody would necessarily think, oh, she has Asperger's. But yet certain things, you know, certain things, I don't clock people's intentions as well as other people might, or it takes me a little bit longer sometimes to process things. And I just walk into interactions and have a default setting that I trust people and that I assume that they would operate the way that I would, which is in good faith. And so I just don't see, you know, there's a thing called betrayal blindness. And
very silly.
I have to
trust no one.
Yeah.
No one's operating in good faith. No, I have the same deficiency in some way, so I can understand.
Yeah. And I mean, this wasn't an isolated event. This has happened to me. There's like that saying, you know, fool me once, shame on you. But for me, it's like, I have to take responsibility for the fact that this has happened to me over and over and over again. And so I really have had to do a lot of deep analysis on understanding the how and the why. I mean, even what happened with the filmmakers, I blindly trusted that they would make an accurate show and that they wouldn't have done something that was on the other side of it, such a betrayal. But, you know,
I mean, they do it all the time over on Netflix. All the time.
yeah, I mean, in this case, the filmmakers made the show and then sold it to Netflix, but Netflix and their
Well, but
marketing
Netflix has a
certainly,
responsibility.
yeah,
They're the airer of it. Like
yeah,
that, they're the ones putting it out there. Like I'm sick of this because Netflix has
I
done this to so
agree.
many people who even I know. It's a pattern. Do not believe the word documentary when Netflix slaps it on any film. It's always going to be docudrama. That I will never believe them when they say documentary ever. Just given what I've seen. But let me go back to the fraud, because near as I can tell, he was taking all this money from you, and he was telling you like he needed it for an emergency, and he talked about like there being kind of like another side. There's some sort of family that sounded more like an ethereal family, not like a mob family, not like a family of origin, but like some quote family that was evaluating you, and you had to pass these tests. And this was after he had ratcheted up the trust factor. He didn't just drop that on you on email one, but eventually he got you believing that your sweet dog Leon, a pet who you adopted, who was absolutely beautiful and very sweet, and who you were in love with, that he could somehow provide immortality for Leon. Here's SOT 54 from the Netflix show.
What eventually happens is that Anthony promises her that if she just followed along with the program he was suggesting, kept going along with what was instructed, he is going to make both Sarma and her dog immortal, just like Anthony is. There was some magical force in play here. And he's already in this special ethereal world because he's passed through the tests into this new state of being.
It's like some fantastical, magical future where my dog is going to live forever, and like this reality didn't really matter because it would all be reset to some sort of utopia. His happily ever after that he always referred to.
Now, when people watching this say, oh, come on, right? Like that would be a bridge too far.
Yeah.
Everyone knows there's no such thing as immortality. How do you explain that?
Well, what I would say is that, you know, I think unless you've been through it, the effects of things like cognitive dissonance and over time ratcheting up level of dissociation, it's not that I believed things he told me necessarily, but they were things that you can't disprove. And so I didn't not believe him. I just didn't know what to believe. And again, he had gotten me in so deep that I didn't see a way out. And so you start to cling to whatever solutions and fantasy that they operate you, because by this point you're desperate. So again, it wasn't so overt that he said, you know, Leon's going to live forever, my dog, but it was all things that he implied. And I think that the more afraid I got, the more I dissociated and wanted to believe that none of this was real because I was in so deep financially. I mean, the most painful part is that this wasn't my money. It's not like I had this money saved and he got it. That would have been, you know, for me, comparatively, that would have been great if that was the only consequence. The most painful part is that this was money that came from the business, which ended up destroying it. And, you know, all of these other people that were hurt through me was the most painful, grueling part of this whole situation.
Because you had investors, you had employees.
Yeah.
And yeah, you were not the only one who would go down as a result
right.
of all this.
And he got money out of my mother, too.
Your company had to close twice, not one, but twice. One time because of all the money he stole, then you reopened, and then it happened a second time, and that second time was the last time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and because he took me away. So when he took me away from the city, I mean, when I was arrested almost a year later, 9 months later, if you had told me that people had stepped in and the restaurant was still running, I would have been relieved. But the point is that the entire time that I was away, I never Googled what happened or, you know, whether or not the restaurant had closed or what happened after I left. And, you know, again, that's something I go into detail in the book so people can better understand how it happened.
Because eventually, and by the way, we should cover this. Do we believe that he was taking all those, you know, $10,000, $100,000 $14,000 checks you were sending him, and eventually your mom was sending him,
Yeah.
and just gambling it?
I believe so, again, because I think people like him, it's not about the money. It would all make much more sense if he had been stashing the money somewhere and, and then had just dumped me and gotten on a plane and, left the country, but he didn't. I think the point was the takedown. And in some ways, it almost feels like the point was to destroy me, to absolutely obliterate me, and to, beyond just the financial side of it, but it's almost as if he wanted me to be so utterly humiliated and broken and to have burned all of my bridges so that any chance for me to recover and come back and rebuild would be, as small as possible. And I'm still trying to do that, but he made sure it would be as difficult as humanly possible.
Every once in a while, something comes along that reminds us of the power of storytelling. Something bold, meaningful, and grounded in faith. The Pendragon Cycle, Rise of the Merlin, is a new 7-part series from the Daily Wire based on the novels by Stephen R. Lawhead. In the series, as pagan gods fall silent and empires collapse, one man's faith lights the spark of a civilization reborn. It's a story about courage, order, and moral clarity. It's the kind of story Hollywood does not make anymore. Through blood, faith, and sacrifice, Merlin becomes the bridge between myth and history and shapes the destiny of kings. The Pendragon Cycle, Rise of the Merlin, premieres exclusively on Daily Wire Plus on January 22nd, 2026. Watch the new trailer now at pendragonseries.com. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.